Hi, everybody, and thank you for another installment of our Experts in the Field at Los Angeles Pierce College. Today, we're going to be interviewing Cal Enriquez, who is also a professor in the Child Development Department at Los Angeles Pierce College. Thank you for joining us, Cal.
Thank you. Good to be here. Thanks, Trish.
So, along with being a professor at Pierce, Cal has some really unique experiences in the field of working with children with exceptionalities. One of those was working with the regional care system. So, Cal, can you tell us a little bit about what was your job at the regional center and kind of what does that even mean?
Okay. God, I'm going way back. Back in February 1994, I was hired at Westside Regional Center and as an early start service coordinator. And to all of you, you're like, what does that mean? First, I have to talk about two systems real quick so you guys fully understand what the regional center and the early start program means to me and it means to all of you because potentially maybe some of you may be employed there and so forth or have an interest. Uh, California's regional center, real quick, was developed back in 1968 officially through an assembly member named Frank D. Lanterman, working with, at that time, Governor Ronald Reagan. Back in 1968, there was an act that was passed called the Lanterman Act. The Lanterman Act opened up a statewide system from the original Lanterman Regional Center to what it is today, 21 regional centers in the state of California. Today, the regional center system serves over 475,000 regional center clients or consumers. Under the Lanterman Act, who do we serve? Who are these 475,000 consumers? Well, there are 5 categories under the Lanterman Act to make a consumer, whether child or adult, from birth to adult, eligible for regional center services. One is autism, which is growing, right? 1 in 52 children now being diagnosed. Number 2, in no particular order, intellectual disability, which I still call mental retardation. Number 3 is cerebral palsy, if it substantially handicaps an individual. Number 4 is epilepsy and seizures, if it substantially handicaps an individual. And the 5th category is called 5th category. It's any type of medical condition that lends to one person being intellectually disabled or mentally retarded. There are a bunch of medical conditions. I can't even go over those. And also genetic disorders like Down syndrome. We also have 5th category diagnoses like prenatal drug exposure now and so forth. So there's a slew of 5th category, if you will, diagnosis. For all of that, that makes a client eligible for the regional center services for life. Okay. Now, here's the tricky part when I try to teach CD44 and CD45. How does early start play a fact to this? So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Early intervention and early start under the Individual Disabilities Education Act. This is a federal mandate. So it's a special education mandate that provides services for children from birth to age 22. All right. Under IDEA, which is called IDEA, Part C, it defines the early start program. And I just want to emphasize this because this is some of the confusion here. Early start or early intervention is a federal mandate. It's a federal program. Okay. And early start or early intervention focuses on children birth to age 3 up until their 3rd birthday. So if you want to look at it the other way, it is a special ed service delivery, but they call it early start. And they broke down the age gap from birth to age 3rd birthday. Okay. Every state is different in terms of how they house this federal program called Early Start. And just to go back to the regional center side, California is the only state in the United States that has a regional center program or mandate, if you will. It is actually driven by the government in the state of California. It's actually a state program. The state of California decided to house this federal program called Early Start in the regional center system. Okay. Now, every state is different, like Hawaii, New York, Texas. I know for a fact that they house the Early Start program through their school districts. So Every state is different how they house this early start program, but just to let you know, the early start program is a federal mandated program. And to make it easier, it's a special ed program that provides services, special ed services to children birth to 3. Um, that's how I began my career at the early start in the regional center system at Westside. Um, and back in 94 and back in 2000, I was the youngest or the male and the youngest supervisor to become the early start supervisor. I think by age 30, God, I'm dating myself, to become the early start supervisor back then at Westside Regional Center.
So
Um,
if you're an early start, if you're working an early start, what do you do as a person who works an early start?
Yeah, so this is totally different when I explain to my students. When you become a staff or a service coordinator at any regional center, whether it's early start or children's unit or adult unit, I always relate it to a profession, social work. Okay,
Okay.
you are not hands-on with children as much as you guys want to be as coming out as a child development major. It's more social work. So I always emphasize the word social. You're really not socializing. There's a lot of paperwork involved here. Organization, each of you will carry a caseload which monitors about 80, 75, 70, 80 families, if you will, of early start
Oh,
consumers. Um, the job is called a service coordinator. Okay. And basically, the title speaks for itself. You're responsible to coordinate services or resources and advocacy for those children and their families in early start or any type of department you work at the regional center. Some of you may focus on early start, which is birth to 3 in the regional center system. Some of you may become a service coordinator in the children's unit. They call it children's unit or school age unit. That age group, it's age 3 to 14. Or if you want to become a service coordinator in the transition unit, 14 to 22, it simply means transition unit means you're preparing them life after high school.
yeah.
And then, or you want to become a service coordinator in the adult unit. So there are 4 different departments in the regional center system, and maybe one of you may become a service coordinator in each of those departments. And
It's really
again,
nice so you can kind of understand the age group that you feel most comfortable and called to serve, and then you can find a place in the regional center.
yes, as I grew into the regional center, early start birth to 3, my passion, my heart impact to this day, even leaving the regional
Yeah.
center 3 years ago, I'm still on their board. I'm still in the governor's task force, DDS meetings. My heart and passions with the regional center consumers, not really focused on early start, although my heart and passion. Every month, every week, I'm participating in meetings to give my students the idea of what is going on in the state of California with budgets or early start or regional center, or most especially special ed services through the school districts. I try to update all my students so they kind of get the political side of it. So they kind of think about things, how the state of California is run.
Well, that's really important too, because that's another option as well, is working for children, but through the political process as well. Thank you for bringing that in. So what would kind of a typical day look like if you were a service coordinator in the Early Start program?
Okay, so organization. So when I interviewed folks, the one thing that I look into most when I interviewed folks is child development, obviously. I want them to have experience. But the one quality in this job, and you can ask all my service coordinator peers as we speak, organization is huge and good writing skills. You have to possess both. Okay, I give a lot of writing assignments to my students, whether it's just an article summary or a research paper. And I'm not an English major, but I pretty much can grade, basic English or grammatical errors. My other job is I work at CSUN's testing center. So I'm trying to prepare my students for writing skills because that's very important in the state of California. Now in social work, writing up plans, writing up goals, objectives, outcomes for these children and their families to meet. That is huge for me. So good writing skills and organization skills, it's a huge plus on top of your experience. So sometimes I'll take those skills over your experience because we can teach you, or regional service can teach you and train you on that job on the line there during your hours there about the regional center system. But writing and organizational skills is a plus. Now, what's a typical day? So let's say you have a caseload about 75. Okay, let's say hypothetically. Um, every client at the regional center, whether it's early start or children's unit or transition or adult unit, they have a plan. All right. The early start plan is called Individualized Family Service Plan, which is the IFSP. And children over age 3 um, becomes another plan called the IPP, the Individualized Person Plan. I'm not going to go into descriptives over that, but each plan has goals and objectives for each consumer, and each plan is good for 1 year. So every year, by their birth date, you kind of have to organize yourself. Okay, so this is the month of November. I'm taking all my November birth dates, and I have to plan myself to develop a new plan for all those families. On top of those cases, there are new cases coming into the regional center. Okay, they're about currently at North LA, right here in the Valley, where I worked, ending my career at the regional center. North Los Angeles Regional Center is here in the Valley. It's the third largest regional center in California. They average about 525 referrals a month. Okay, so that's about 525 new cases per month, and those new cases are going to service coordinators, right? So you kind of have to organize
Mhm.
yourself, because then when those new cases come in, you have to develop an initial plan on top of your annual plan. So again, service coordinators organize themselves of home visits. Of course, during COVID-19, it's all telehealth or however you want, it's all virtual. Okay. You still have to have that meeting and meet with them and so forth. Pre-COVID or post-COVID, hopefully you go to the homes, you have a meeting with them. Hopefully you can develop a meeting with their team members, if you will. We'll talk about vendors in a little bit here, but their vendors or their family members, whoever's involved with that child, you want them invited to that annual meeting so you can talk about that consumer's goal. And again, it's just organization. How do you organize your visits during the week? How do you organize your write-up plans during the week? Because you have to type, and paperwork is a big majority of your workload. Every regional center, to its advantage, you have what is called a telecommute day. Every regional center understands that the paperwork is a must. So telecommute day is you're still working, but you're working at home typing up your reports. Okay. And some regional centers are very favorable to have 2 telecommutes a day or a week, if you will. Some have 1. And again, regardless of that, it gives you a chance to work at home to type your reports up. And I promise you this, every regional center has that telecommute feature because of the paperwork and the demand of the workload. Okay. Phone calls, you have to answer phone calls. That's, oh my good, every minute there's a phone call. My policy was every 24/7, answer, return a phone call by 24 hours. Okay. So on top of those reports, phone calls, coordinating services, calling the vendors up. Hey, are you available to provide services, occupational therapy for this child? If not, you have to move on to the next vendor. So it's organization. A perfect service coordinator, like I have one right now. She was my guest speaker about 2 weeks ago. She would organize her day from 8 to 11 phone calls, 11 Tuesday, Thursdays, home visits. Friday is my office day. I'm going to catch up with everything Friday before I go home for the weekend. So, organization, I'm just listing you the type of jobs you have to do as a service coordinator. There's probably more to it than that. But again, how you organize your weekend day, you'll be a successful service coordinator for a long time. I have peers right now in their 20th year or their 15th year because they got it. They got that system. It's the new folks coming in, mentors, right? It's their job to teach them how to be a well professional service coordinator. And it's always a teaching and training moment every day.
So with that huge caseload and amount of paperwork, what would you say was your favorite aspect of when you were a service coordinator? What was your favorite thing about the job?
As a child development major, the best part was I have a master's in child development. I got my degree back in Long Beach back in my master's in 2000 at Long Beach State, and 92 as my for my bachelor's. I was proud because I was still the only male to graduate as the only male, which is kind of cool. Jokingly aside, all my friends thought and my parents thought I did it for the women, but I didn't do that. I love children. That's
Yeah.
my heart and passion. And when I went to Early Start, when I first got my career in regional center, it exposed myself to children with special needs. That is the proudest moment of my career right now, is to be introduced to that, because I wasn't during my child development educational career or educational life back at Long Beach. It was only typical preschool children and so forth, preschool teaching, and to branch out to learn about a regional center system, which I never thought I would get a job in, getting graduating from college, right? So to all your students, make sure that there's preschool teaching, child development specialists. There are a lot of jobs out there that you can secure. It's based on what you want to do at your given moment. The proudest moment is becoming an early start manager, supervising, being a director, going to the state meetings. I was pretty much well known in California.
Yes, you are.
So that was the highlight. Again, February back in '94, again, exposing myself to infants 0 to 3. I didn't focus on birth to 3 in college. I only focused selfishly from age 3 to 6. And to go to that first home visit, to play with that infant, to understand the developmental milestones of infants to birth to age 3, understanding going to a home with an 18-month-old, not yet talking. Now, back then to now, I pretty much mastered milestones with children. And I tried to emphasize that to all of you, all of your students, and my students in particularly, because if you want to venture into special ed or early start, you have to know milestones.
Yeah.
And I am not telling my students after class to go to Ralph's or to go to a personal party and start evaluating kids. No, no, no. Diagnosing children with autism because you just lecture. No, no, no. I want you to be aware of what the resources are. And once you identify children who have needs, then give them that resource so they can call, families can call for help. Okay.
And I just want a second. Cal is that person. He is the person who's passionate about children, and he absolutely brings that to Pearson. He brings it to every meeting. So I just wanted to underscore you are absolutely, yeah, correct in everything that you're saying. So I think you've pretty much already said it, but what were the most difficult moments of that profession?
Yeah, well, obviously, when you're the regional centers is controlled by mandates and states and
Yeah.
regulations and stuff like that. Um, for early start, in particularly, there are certain eligibility criteria you have to be able
Yeah.
to possess or exhibit for you to become eligible for early start. So every time a regional center or my department, let's just say, denied anything
Yeah.
or denied services for a family from 1 hour to 2 hours a week, that was difficult for me because I wanted to give everything for the families. But then I learned it's not necessarily how many hours you give a child services, it's the quality of
Yeah.
services. It took me a while to learn that because I was the giving guy in the beginning. Oh man, he's not eligible. He just missed the cut. You had to be 33% delay of the chronological age under this one category for early start. So if you're 24 months of age, to be eligible for services for early start, you have to have a 16-month level in either the cognitive language, personal social, motor delays, whatever domain we're testing. But sometimes families were at the 18-month level and didn't make the criteria. So back in the 90s, there weren't that many alternatives. There weren't many, like, where do I take this family to? Now you have a lot of services now because the health insurance is now polishing up. They do provide services. I know the health insurance is a challenging process. We do have resources that we can lend certain families now to further enhance their child's development. But every time in the regional center, when I had to deny a service and not that guilty conscience of not helping out a family, as you mature, you get more mature professionally. But in the beginning, that was tough for me. But at the same time, to let you guys all know that the regional center system and the school districts in particularly have a fair hearing process, which is beautiful because the parents have a right to contest in a fair hearing model. They get to present their side of it to the judge that we have appointed by the state of California. That's beautiful as well. So they have a right to an appeal process, which in the beginning I didn't understand, but as a mature professional throughout the regional center, I encourage families to fight
Yeah,
for their child.
absolutely.
Let the judge make that decision in an appeals process. We're in the regional center as an advocate with the IEP process and the school district as well. The family has a right to represent their child. My job, and today I still, there's challenges here, is empowerment. There are certain cultures in the community that needs that empowerment. I'm not going to go into the various cultures here, but my job today, to this day, is to go out in the community and empower certain cultures to encourage them to fight for their children and maybe to actually call the regional center for help or call the school district for help. I'm a proud Filipino. I'm not very happy when I go to the state of California and I only see the percentage of regional center consumers for Filipino families is 3%.
Yeah.
Um, hey, our culture doesn't escape it. Our culture defends it. That's the cultural barrier here, because I have to respect that. And you respect all families who don't make those referrals. It's not child abuse. It's not neglect. That's parental choice. Okay, this is 100% voluntary program that's offered to families in the state of California, and you need to remember that because there are relatives that I know that didn't follow my ideas or follow my referral process ideas. And you know what? I don't get upset about it. I did my job, and I want my students to understand, along with your students, to understand once you give them that resource and referral, be proud of yourself. You made that referral, you gave that information. It's up to them to follow up with that.
I think that's such a powerful point to make, Cal, and thank you so much for helping us kind of view it's not bad parenting, that there's a huge cultural piece that does play in the way that the system in the United States works is sometimes contrary to cultural values or understanding or ability to trust government programs. And we have to enter into our work with those families not in an adversarial way, but as a this is what's available here way. I can help you through it or I can support you in your choices. So it is really important to emphasize that a lot of times it's the culture or the just not knowing. Um,
You're
and
right.
it's not
Um,
bad
it,
parenting.
You're correct. And whatever class you take in our department, CD 1, 2, 3, 7, 11, 44, 45, 32, multicultural diversity should be
Yes.
pinpointed in each class.
Yes.
Um, that's a very important aspect, not just in our department and in life.
Yes.
Um, and I always tell my class the R word, respect. You may disagree with child rearing, parental habits, for whatever reason. Okay. I have that in me, but you have to respect it. Okay. I always give the example. My mom, punishment when I was a kid was with a one smack of the belt.
Yep.
Punishment reward system, right? If I did it today, DCFS is going to be on, right? So here we go. Cultures, you have to respect cultures. You don't have to agree with them, but don't try to change cultures. Okay. Then you're really not into your professional mode. You're being disrespectful. Okay. So this is in very, very, this is the heart and passion in child development is multicultural diversity. Okay. And all of us in this as instructors have grimaced it throughout the whole entire your career. And for students moving forward, I promise you this: multicultural diversity is going to hit you professionally and personally, and it's up to you to critical think about those situations, but never make it personal.
Well, there's
Yeah,
almost no other job where you get to work with somebody's most prized, aspect of their life. And yeah, it's
and I can tell you this: going back to the
powerful.
regional center profession, a lot of students coming out of child development are applying now at the regional
Oh,
center.
good.
There are no more like me at the regional center lifers. Okay, all those lifers are retiring soon, but the new crop of regional center service coordinators, which is a great starting job because now you get to see the other side of it. I know it's social work and so forth, but at the same time, all the stuff that you learned in child development or whatever degree you have, you're going to really see the side of child development that you learned, especially on the politics side and also on the developmental side. All your stuff that all the lectures that you learned, I promise you, comes into play in the as a service coordinator. Some employees are preschool teachers first or child development specialists first, and then maybe you know what, I need a new career change, and then they go into the social work side of it. That's another avenue most students take. There's another social work aspect which I kind of broke the contract in back in December. I work for DCFS. You know, that's another planet. If you want to go into that type of social work, it's more personal there. It's more emotional. I'll just say that. You work with foster children. You work with child abuse and so forth. So you got to have a different kind of heart there and dedication for that kind of profession. But foster children in all my are in all my lectures, because that those are also children there that are being maltreated and so forth, and sometimes being forgotten. And so they're the ones that we need to empower in that system. We kind of need to change and tweak that system a little bit. There's a lot of children in LA County, as you know, God, 10,000 children need to be adopted. So that's another issue, is family home. So, yeah.
So many options
Yes.
in our field, depending on kind of where your heart is leading you. So I think that's a perfect segue into your current career as a vendor through the regional center system. So can you please just tell us, what does it mean to even be a vendor? And
Okay.
then what do you do as a vendor?
Well, in the regional center system, the services that we coordinate our children and our regional center clients and their families are to what is called vendors. Vendors are basically contracted companies that provide certain types of services for all the regional center consumers. There's a whole list of them, from early start vendors, from occupational therapy, physical therapy vendors, speech therapy vendors, child development specialist vendors, to school age behavioral intervention vendors, ABA vendors, however you want to call them, and adult programs. We have adult day program vendors and so forth. So North LA has over 4,000 vendors. So, but they're just compartmentalized in terms of a certain type of service delivery. Okay. So that's, in a nutshell, that's what a vendor is. When I joined accredited, well, I wasn't even trying to join accredited home care, to be honest with you. I knew of them because as of June 9th this year, the company that I work for is called Accredited Home Care. We just turned 40 years old back on June 9th. So we've been established, one of the original vendors of the regional center, going back 40 years ago. What is accredited home care? Well, I actually came in accidentally 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago. I actually came in because I knew who they were. I knew who my contact person, they're Millette. I came in there just literally for them to come to my class and talk about what you're asking me, what respite is and so forth, to come to my class and maybe encourage them. And to make a long story short, I was kind of panicking here because it was 5 o'clock meeting. I only kind of, only 20 minutes. I'm just going to say 20 minutes because I had a class that night, right? And I have a little routine where I eat my dinner and all that stuff. And I ended up staying till 6:45 because, to make a long story short, they offered me a position to run the regional center side of things over there. And I didn't really take the job first because I was kind of busy with other things. But anyway, I've been there 3 years. Accredited home care, I'm going to explain our company first, and I'm going to explain to how I got the position. I'm going to look at it as a 3-tier type department in terms of our company. We provide 3 services, and accredited is well known throughout the state. So accredited home care, the first part of our department is home health. We provide in-home home health services. So we have licensed nursing, physical therapy. We have contracts with Kaiser Permanentes. Our biggest one is Los Angeles Jewish Home and Cedar Sinai. So all of those outpatients coming out, we are the company that could be referred to provide that in-home home health services in their home. So we have a lot of staff on the field to provide licensed medical services, respiratory therapy, occupational therapy, and so forth. So that's one facet of our company.
And is
Our
this the age span, or is this only children? So it's entire?
children, no, because we're starting to hire. It's hard to hire professionals that work with children, especially nursing. We're starting that department. We're trying to hire more
Interesting.
pediatric nurses, but mainly it's adult patients.
Okay,
And
excellent.
our second department, before we get to mine, is the home care. So we provide home care services like assisted living, okay, and for the elderly, non-medical patients. And
Okay.
these, first of all, these 2 departments are not even related to my department. They're not even regional center clients. These are non-regional center clients. So these are private pay, in-home home care services. You have to have your home care certification, HCA. And that's our second department. And then our third department is my department, which originally how this company started. I'm in charge of the regional center side of business. We are vendor under the regional center services under these three services. Respite, I'll go over each one real quick. Personal assistant, which is growing right now because of COVID, and daycare services. So these are the three core services we are vendored under. I think when I started 3 years ago, we had 12 regional centers in California we were working with. Today, because of my networking and marketing, we work with 17 now.
Go
So
Cal.
yeah, it's busy marketing, recruiting, and stuff like that. So we are vendor to provide those services for our families and services, or our families and children and adults and so forth. What is respite? So I'm coming to you. Maybe you want to be interested in this job. 13 of my peer students in CD 45 last semester and 44 are employed with us part-time. Here it is. Respite. Parents need a break. Okay. Every parent needs a break, but especially for those who have a child with a disability.
Yep.
Okay. What is respite? It's home care. Okay. Based on your experience, every regional center contracts a family to have a certain amount of hours of respite. Most families get about 30 to 45 hours a month. That means 30 to 45 hours a month of freedom from their child, if you want to look at it that way. They can be in the other room with their other siblings. They can go out on a date,
Yeah.
husband, wife, whatever. They can do their groceries, whatever it is. That caregiver comes to the home, our respite worker comes to the home and provides caregiving services for that child. Depending on their experience, right? We assign those respite workers. Sometimes a family may call me and say, Cal, we need respite service Saturday from 12 to 6. My staff's job is to coordinate a respite worker to fulfill that time. And hopefully it's a match. 9 times out of 10, it's a match. But our respite worker will then come to the family home from 12 to 6 and provide respite services for that family. All respite services are in home. And the best part about this job to your students, this is part-time. The two things that come out of this job is experience and flexibility. Okay. The experience is growth for you because you get to finally work with a child. It may be caregiving, but you're working with a child with autism. Some of you may not work with a child with autism, like my students. Today they flourish now because when they put it on their resume, that's a huge plus on your resume when you work with children with special needs or adults with developmental disabilities. Okay. So respite is in-home care. Personal assistant, I'm going to talk about it in 2 phases, pre-COVID and COVID.
Yes.
Pre-COVID is personal assistant means that you're able to go to the community setting with the client of the regional center. For children, for example, for school ages after school sites, some of the children need help from after school programs from like 2:30 to 6, Monday through Friday, because we need to help that child one-on-one, if you will, access their after school program, access the homework activity, and then other activities in the after school program. That's a popular one. And it's Monday through Friday, 2:30 to 6. That's a nice part-time job if you're able to do it. That's a popular one for children. Another one is summer camp. Oh my God. So we established 17 contracts in the last 2 years with local summer camps from YMCA's
Excellent.
to little private programs. And you're basically, again, they're one-on-one in their shadow. But guess what? For 2.5 months, it's full time. 9 to 5, 8:30 to 5. You get to go to summer camp and do all the field trips. You are just making sure that child is safe and healthy. That's
Right.
it. Okay. Bring your lunch, whatever. Sometimes they treat, whatever. And another personal assistant is adult programs. Sometimes adults need that one-on-one as well. Vocational training. You're there to help them guide themselves, not do their job, but make sure they focus and make sure they retain their memory and all that stuff. So that's personal assistant. Or for adults, like companionship, like LA Jewish Club, you're helping that consumer go to that club and making sure they're socially interacting and appropriately and so forth. That's personal assistant. Now with COVID, it's kind of changed a little bit here. Because there is no community anymore, right? We can't go out, right? All the programs are closed. Unfortunately, they're losing a lot of money, blah, blah, blah. And we can go into that later. But personal assistant today is virtual learning. LA Unified, which we're on the phone a lot and having meetings with, is not providing the appropriate special ed services right now in the home because it's not a classroom setting. We can debate that as long as we want, but they're asking us now to be that one-on-one person to go in their home to help their child focus and redirect in virtual learning.
Yep.
Our business, I don't want to be proud of this, sadly enough. Due to COVID, our business has spiked dramatically because we're getting a lot of requests now from Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 1, 8:30 to 2. Cal, we need some of your workers to help us and help our children focus, our child focus on virtual learning.
Yeah.
Again, we're not academics, teachers, we're not tutors. They're just there to provide the assistance. So everyone is sane in that household. So right now, personal assistant right now, it's because of COVID, it's kind of booming in our business right now. And then last but not least is daycare. Daycare is almost the same as respite. Okay, it's in-home care and so forth. The reason why it's labeled daycare is because during that time, the parents are actually working. Okay, so same care. It's just when we get a daycare referral, I know for a fact the family's working full time or something, employment or a full time student. That's why it's called a daycare or daycare referral that we receive. So we are one of the top referral systems in the state. I know that for a fact, even before I went into accredited. We're called the top three, I was told, the big three in California. So North LA, which is right down over here, the street here in Chatsworth, it helps to have the third largest regional center in your backyard. And there's not a day where we get about 25 to 50 referrals a day. We like to hire, we recruit every day. We hire folks because it's part-time. Every one of you, to your students and to the child development students, every one of you gives flexibility. You have your own different schedules, and all of you give different expertise and passion that you want to go into. And the best part is flexibility. So if you give me 5 hours a month or 20 hours a month or 10 hours a week, there is no minimum or maximum. You control this, okay? If you're available, great. If you're not, I don't take it personal. You know, some of you, you know what? I need a study break. I don't want to study today. Hey, maybe you want to work. I don't know. I'm not trying to encourage that. But hey, this job gives you professionalism. It gives you at least an introduction with children in caregiving in terms of how we work with children with special needs.
So it sounds like this interview, we kind of did the reverse. We've just talked about a very nice entry level. I'm still going through school. Let me get some experience, figure out the age groups that I'm really called to work with, all the way going up into working for the regional center in more kind of a social work program manager type of position.
Yeah, in
Excellent.
fact, this is also great. Like we had 12 students from CSUN that work with us, but they graduated, they got a full-time job. But this is how flexible it is. They, hey Cal, I'm free on Saturdays. Do you have any cases on Saturdays? Right? This is how flexible it is. Okay. So again, it's a nice starting point. This is part-time now. So for students, it's a great opportunity because it's part-time. Okay.
And I
Okay.
remember working with families when they had a respite care worker,
Yeah.
just the breath they could take knowing. And I think it's important for those who don't know as much about families who have a child with an exceptionality, just the anxiety of going to a restaurant
Right.
or the toll it takes on a relationship, even with a sibling, let alone with in a marriage of not being able to just have a quiet dinner um, and just actually talk and kind of get on the same page about what we're doing in life. Seen a lot of sibling issues too, of just being able to kind of do the things that their friends are doing. And so being able to have a respite care worker, so the child with the exceptionality has their special time, and the sibling or the marriage can have its special time is mental health. And that's creating a stronger family. And so I think this is such a neat opportunity that I'm so glad you could share with us, because I don't think a lot of students know this is even an option.
Right.
And I'm not sure how many families know it's an option either. So if
Out of
I
work.
was a student or I had somebody in my family that had some type of disability or exceptionality, what would you suggest to that family if they were interested in this thing called respite care? What would be the process for that family to go through?
So to secure regional center services like respite or whatever services the child may need or the family may need, you obviously first have to be a regional center client. Um, as a professor in Pierce, it's not my job is to teach you what it is, but it's also the job of my former service coordinators in the regional center. You know, I hopefully they're well trained. It's their job to assess the family. So when you become a service coordinator, that's one of your jobs, is to look at the family supports, not just the child, but their macro system, right? Their supports, lack of supports. It is your job as a service coordinator to identify needs, not just the child's needs, also the family needs. And if you assess that accordingly and appropriately, you will assess that, man, this family needs respite. This family needs personal assistant. So as a service coordinator, you're going to learn as you go as a professional in that job how to assess things and not just focus on the child. The child is actually the easy part because you're just
Yes.
incorporating services for that child to help him developmentally. But the one thing as a true service coordinator, if you're really good at this, look at the macro part, right? You guys learned this in CD1. I emphasize this in CD 44 and 45. Yuri Bronfman Brenner, right? Microsystem, macro, exo, meso, all those systems. In special ed, we only focus on one. It's called the micro, right? It's that child with special needs. As professionals, we forget about their other systems, right? You talk about the parents, autism, right? You can look at the stats. 90% of parents end in divorce or separation because of the lone diagnosis called autism. What are we missing here, regional centers? We have to help those parents. We have to give them therapy or something that we're starting to do as a regional center client because mental health is a big component for parents in this duress with their child with special needs. Remember, when you're planning to have a child, you're not expecting regional centers not in your plans. A nice, healthy baby child, although those all the children in the regional are healthy, but you're not expecting a certain type of diagnosis for them to be a regional center client. That alone is an emotional transition that you have to tend to. Again, I'm only giving the semantics of the job and the regional center and so forth. A 3-week part of my semester in each class I teach, I try to teach the importance of the emotional component of this field, which you guys need to understand. And the one thing I teach my students, and I always tell, student, whether it's CD1, never tell a family, oh, I totally understand what you're going through. I totally understand. That so-called phrase, I totally understand. Oh, I understand. No, you don't. Stop it. Okay? Because once you enforce that validity or professional strength that you think you have, you really don't know what it's like to have a child with disability, unless you have one, right? I don't have one, and to this day, I never compare my parentals or my lifestyle with those who have a child with a disability.
Oop, Cal, you're muted.
And that's the one
Right.
thing that you guys we need to learn in the field is even in typical preschool settings, right? Again, you're going to have those moments when parents come in, right? Again, they're coming in, whether they're happy, whether they're upset, whether they're confused. Listen, they go through a lot as well, as much as we think they don't. They go through a lot of stuff. And we have to understand their family dynamics. I hope preschools now are open to home visits more so they understand their family dynamics because maybe there's something going on with this child. We always label children because of their behaviors. Hey, step back a little bit here, right? I always tell my students never have a favorite. Everyone guilty has one. Oh, there she is, Princess, right? Prince Cal's here, but then, someone else comes in. Oh no, he's here today. Hey, we have to start assessing not the child's behaviors, we have to start assessing the families as well. And because mental health is now a big component now in child development now, especially infant mental health. So
Yes.
we have to remember that as professionals. I know I'm going off base here, but anyway, go ahead.
But these are all such important points, and I think it drives home the passion that you have for each of those roles that you've played so far. And I wanted to thank you so much
Yeah,
for coming today and giving us an insight into all of these different areas. If you are interested, Cal is on the Los Angeles Pierce College Child Development page, and I think you'd be more than welcome to go ahead and contact him, or I would offer take one of his classes
yeah.
and find out more about each of these different opportunities. So thank you, Cal, very much for joining us,
Awesome.
and we'll see you in class.